Greetings, Small Gardens here reporting in for this Thursday day. How is everybody doing today? As you know, pop culture days are going to be a transition from the serious part of the week to a more relaxed part of the week. And as such, that means that you are to expect this talk to be fairly interesting. And with that note, we are going to be talking about gangs. Now, before you do that thing where you jump to conclusions, understand that the logic you use when you think about games in a imagination sense is not going to be the logic you would use in a realistic sense. And I'll leave it at that. With that said as well, what about games am I going to be talking about is pop culture. Now, last time I talked about pop culture, it was about basically the pop idol, and before that I talked about basically fads. So it makes sense that a gang could logically be talked about given these subject topics because they use both of these criteria. Now, how gangs use this criteria is that usually when you have a gang, there is no definite number of people, they're just people. And the rules of this gang are often dictated by what brought these people together. And that is how you go from imagination to reality. Usually people are attracted to non-violent aspects of the gang. And you know how a gang becomes violent is that you essentially take that leadership and you test it. And if people follow, good for you. If people don't, good for you. um, and to get into the more cooler aspects, gangs can be very productive in the sense of what you would call the formation of hobbyists. And the reason why the formation of hobbyists are the positive side of it is because a hobby can fall into just about anything. There are probably hobbies out there that I don't know about that would have probably made me scratch my head and be like, people get amusement from this. But on a more normal note, we'll talk about things that you've probably already seen. Now, in my experience, chess has always been a good hobby for me. People tend to turn hanging out into a hobby. That's probably the most common game. And that's how the game forms most easily. When you are able to take a simple cause and use it to get people to essentially follow behind. I feel like the most easiest games that'll get formed are between females. But males tend to be more, that's the difference. A female gang is more inclusive to the gender. Male gangs are more exclusive to their gender. And then from there, the intertwining of gangs is always a very formal process. It's never anything too, out of this world, because basically the idea is that it only takes a couple of people to disintegrate a gang. And that's just the fluidity of the gang, the idea that is a loose conglomeration of people on any given day. There is no obligation, there is no duty. It's just you are a gang, and when you feel like it, you are. When you don't feel like it, you're not. Um, what even brought me into this line of thinking was actually Scooby Doo. And you know, if you ever watched Scooby Doo, you've heard the line, "I would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for the meddling kids." And the meddling kids are within themselves a gang because they came together in the mystery machine to solve crimes. And you know, I feel like that general theme is what makes any gang. You can get any group of people together. You just need to get a good cause. And I find it fitting that I talk about this now after I done talked about politics and history and all that stuff, because you see the gang mentality automatically forming when you talk about politics. You see the gang mentality already formulating when you talk about history. You see the gang mentality forming when you match history with contemporary. Everybody has their reasons for being in a gang. It's not it's not the individual causes that's supposed to be scrutinized. It's the group cause that's supposed to be scrutinized at all times. And I feel like that's a flaw that usually gets um overlooked, because there is a tendency to allow the gang to take control. And what that means is that it's the problem. The worst gangs go from gangs to peer pressure all the time, all the time, all the time, all the time. And this most notably happens when the gang becomes like once the gang reaches a certain number of people, then it becomes easy to misuse the gang idea. And you know, it's gonna happen. And I feel like the fact that it happens no matter what age you are just goes to show that some things never change. And how this relates to pop culture is because, you know, that's essentially what pop culture is. You got kids that think certain things are cool, and then it becomes a journey to find other people who think it's cool. And then from there, you know, boom. Now you got people who you can share a common cause with, and hopefully they don't do nothing stupid to make you be like, I don't want to play no more. um, and you know, there are no, I feel like gangs just are going to be, those are never going to go out of fashion because it is a natural human condition to, and I hate to use the word human, it's actually more of an animal condition to, create a reason to, work together. Because get two dogs together and they'll be alright. Get two of anything that's the same species together and they will be alright. So, you know, you can't really call it a phenomenon. Because it happens so often that you can't, like, say that there's a science behind it. And yet, people are going to be under the opinion that it is. But once you start focusing people's attention on individual causes, then, you know, by basically saying, oh, you're only here because so and so and so, then you're automatically working towards disintegrating the gang. The gang is so fluid, you can't even call it an entity, because when you think about an entity, you tend to think of things that remain as you observe them. You know what I mean? I don't see, like, people are an entity because they're not gonna come apart if you start to address them or you start to ask them questions, or yada yada yada. Um, what makes the gangs fun though is that, you know, it's easy to, when you have gangs that only congregate on specific times like concerts and stuff. I feel like those are the best games because none of those people know each other, but yet they're there for a specific cause. And everybody's able to have fun without worrying about what another person is there. The more impersonal gang is the internet. I love talking about the internet, but the reason why the internet is a good um example is because it's so easy to get people to involve themselves in the internet that you can't even give a reason for why the internet works. It just appeals to that animal condition. And there are so many different venues for using the internet that you can't even say that there's a specific reason why people use the internet. Rather, you will have a better chance explaining why people don't use the internet, to be honest with you. But back moving closer towards pop culture, the gang mentality will also encourage people to essentially troll each other as well. Especially if you have a hobby involved. Like people will, once you put a hobby and the internet together, then it automatically becomes a cauldron for all types of emotions, insults, just crazy stuff, man. People, I feel like people, you always gonna have people, like you have hobbyists, you're gonna always have an anti-hobbyist. And the reason why the anti-hobbyists are around is because the internet provides the perfect filter so that they can vent their anti-hobby feelings without risking harm to themselves. Because you know, you would, I feel like in real life somebody walked over just to tell you, you know, your hobby sucks, like you will feel a certain type of way about it, you know? But that's just a realistic that's just realistic empathy right there. Um Moving towards hobbies, like hobbies can really get into weird things. Like like I don't know how many people even collect bugs anymore. Or you got people that like to a weird thing, a weird culture, a weird hobby, my bad. A weird hobby is anime. And the reason why it's weird is because there's so many different denominations of it. You can't really say what defines an anime hobbyist. However, you can definitely see that there's a lot of diversity in anime because it's just cartoons. I mean, when you don't put a limit on a person, when you have a hobby that doesn't have a limit on imagination, you're going to see some bizarre things, man. Like people that got an attraction to anime characters, and I'd be like, you're doing this for attention, aren't you? Or people that imitate anime characters well, but they just do it the wrong way. Like I feel like if you go outside and you imitate an anime character, make sure you don't attract police attention, man. I seen a couple of I seen a couple, yeah, I seen a couple of photos of cats imitating anime characters, doing it right, and I seen a couple of photos of anime people imitating anime characters and doing it wrong. And I feel like if you're gonna purposely do a hobby wrong, then at least do it on the internet. Don't do it on real life and just cause a scene. Because at least worst case scenario, you do attract the wrong attention on the internet. that's going to be your problem alone. You're not involving whoever decided to come outside today. For the youth, gang pop culture means that you are basically, it's like friends. It's like a speed lane for friends, basically. And the reason why I say that is because gangs open up the opportunity to basically make friends easily and quickly without really having to think about it or subject yourself to uncomfortable situations. Also, it allows a longevity that you wouldn't otherwise have if you were pursuing individual interactions, because one person to one person, that you're very limited what you can do between two people. Now if you got one person meeting a group of people, now that person can appeal to more than one interest, and by appealing to more than one interest, you are a greater asset to the group. uh Games are also a good learning experience, because I feel like everybody should put themselves in a position, well, at least in their youth, to be put under peer pressure so you can figure out what type of person you are. I feel like that's the only gift that games really has in that regard, in terms of peer pressure, that you can figure out, am I a yes man, or am I a no man, or am I a maybe man? Like basically, what is your line? Where do you draw the line for this peer pressure stuff? And some people may be under the impression that there is no line. Some people may be under the impression that they make the line. And that's cool and everything. But when you talk about individual involvement, the individual determines when they draw the line, always. But that's just a fact of the matter thing. Youth, in terms of pop culture towards idols, they are. I feel like that's one of the pure sides of games, when you can share your your role model opinion with other people and get a positive response. Because there are a lot of people that don't share the same pop idols, and that can cause friendly banter, or it can cause ridicule. It all depends, man. It all depends. But that's just a more positive note. But I guess even if you like a pop idol that nobody else likes, it's not a big deal. It's just easier to like. I feel like it's easier to like people that people already like, versus picking people that people don't really pay attention to. Because people, it's that group effect. Good feelings create a better feeling when you feel it, and bad feelings create a worse feeling when you feel it. But I feel like that's kind of like applying the science to greens, but it's not, because you'll get this from when you basically when you have your situations, when you decide to involve yourself in a group. And I feel like just involving yourself in a group in general is a learning experience everyone should have, even if people are not your forte, because You need to have a real life experience for why people are not your forte. You can't just say, "Oh, I don't really like I don't really like to hang out with people," and not have a reason. But I feel like religion is more of a hobby, more of a gang hobby now, because there's so many denominations, and depending on your denomination, the rules for affiliation can be very strict. And it may be counterintuitive to think of a religion as a gang, and yet the logic follows. But if religion is a gang, what is the gang to you? That's what I'm trying to say. So I feel like that's the perspective that's missing from a lot of religious believers, because you get so it's easy to get accepted into a gang. It's easy to be integrated and all of that other stuff, but it's never easy to figure out what this gang is sometimes. And if you can't figure out what the gang is for you, then I don't feel like you're in the proper gang. Then again, I feel like people have this realization naturally, because they need to do a statistic on how many people convert, reconvert, yada yada yada. Um, change over and all that other stuff. Um, um, um. Gangs are they're like society for dummies in a general summarization. And I feel like gangs will always be the grand categorizer of society, because even if you don't use music as a filter, kids are always going to feel like they want to hang with certain kids because yada yada yada. And they're always gonna feel like they don't want to hang with other kids, yada yada yada. So, you know, you ain't gotta feel no way about it. All you have to do is find you a gang if you want one. That's what a lot of people also mess up, that desire to be accepted. And we if you're a male, you have a desire to be accepted. If you're a female, you have a desire to be accepted. Everybody has a desire to be accepted. It's a matter of by who. And that's how gangs becomes a pop culture thing. Because now, depending on what you want to be accepted for, you have your groundwork to do. And once you have people with similar ideas, then the game becomes interesting. Competitiveness becomes a social sport. So people. All of this is an attempt to remove the negative connotation from gangs. That gangs are this is not a mafia thing or a cartel thing or a what you call it, a gangs of New York type of thing. This is like I just said, a social a social game for dummies. And you know, a lot of people don't look at it this way or understand it this way, because it's like when you're talking about pure experience, then you're not thinking, you're just experiencing. And I feel like experience is that's the real conversation topic. People don't talk to people and think about how they talk to you, yada yada yada. It becomes a more naturalized process the more you involve yourself with gangs or without gangs, depending on your motivations. Now, when you have gangs that get regarded as cults, like you heard of you got people that like to imitate goths or like to imitate cultures like Ozzy Osmond, whatever that guy's name is. I bit the head off of a bat. When you got cults like that, I find it appropriate that society has already created the term cult to explain people that are a small gang in comparison to most gangs and are generally regarded as what you would call alternative society. Yeah, like you gotta, if you ever heard of alternative rap, well, this is what you would call alternative society. And I feel like those people are the example that you can form your own gang. You don't need to be publicly accepted. You just need to have more than just you in a gang. And you know what makes a gang? Well, no, you can't really say because there's so many different people. There's so many different reasons. There's so many different ideas that you can't really say. What makes a gang is written in stone because you may say something I may make the next group be like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. Yada yada yada. However, I think what's interesting is how gangs adapt to adult life. And you know, it may not be realistic to think that adults still participate in gangs, but they kinda do, they kinda don't. You know, the reason why adults participate in gangs is because being in a gang doesn't necessarily mean you're doing a hobby per se. However, I did define it as such. On the other hand, not every hobby is for fun. Work is technically a hobby. um, and how that turns out is that people, you'll see this every day. When you have that's the whole point of the job filtering process because to get into the gang, you must have qualities that the gang wants. If you don't have qualities that the gang wants, then you will not be introduced into a new group of people who you will otherwise not see or know. And that's how adult life is like a gang. And the reason why I even explained it like this is because, youth tend to interpret the world through their parents. And it's true, you can't do everything you did as a kid for the rest of your life as an adult. However, some things never change and the gang mentality never changes. Being in a gang as a kid just means that you have to learn how to make your own rules. And once you're able to make your own rules, you can transfer this gang mentality to an adult mentality. And once you become an adult, officially, by joining an adult gang, then you are able to figure out how to balance your new rules, which is, it's a consequence of being affiliated. You're always going to have rules dictated by the gang as a part of your cooperation with the gang. How to balance that with whatever rules you've taken into adulthood. Now, this is easier said than done because gang rules are purposely built to interfere with whatever rules you've created as a youth. And that's just a part of adapting to society. The idea that nobody will ever be perfectly adapted to society. You will always have new rules, you will always have new gangs, you will always have a part of society that you don't understand, because in totality, society is a huge gang that encompasses everybody. And even though everybody doesn't participate with everybody by interaction, we still participate by existence. And if you had a problem with that, then go find you a very underground place, or a very high place, or a place that people can't really find you without going to excessive limits. But that's just the name of the game. The name of the game is that you're always in the game. And I feel like most people don't understand what that means, because individual interactions can change how you operate. And if a game tells you to do one thing, but you're interacting with a person individually, you're not going to feel pressure to do anything that the game is asking you to. But when you interact with more than one person, now the gang liability start to take effect, and now this is how people get pressured to do or to not do stuff. And there comes a lot of ground rules and stuff that needs to be established with outside parties, that just kill the whole interaction. Like, basically, a sad logic of gangs is that by being in a specific gang, you automatically cut yourself off from a specific group of people, guaranteed, without hesitation. And that can make people either agree with it or try not to agree with it, and try to what you would call kid themselves, and basically entertain a reality that can't exist. Like, real world stuff. I can't lie to you. I cannot lie to you. This is my voice, my words. I back these words 100%. You can ask me about them anytime, and I'll tell you this is what I said. But real life stuff, who you talk to will cut you off from who you can't talk to. Every time. Every time. And this is how gangs get thrown into that science. Because the idea is that if gangs cut you off from people, what can you do to get these people back to you? And that's how the science kicks in. Now, when you think about it, if you're talking about interacting with people to people, it can't be a science, because you are you're not in a laboratory. You're not dealing with liquid, solids, none of this stuff. This is people to people, completely abstract, completely what you would call irrelevant in terms of importance or in terms of significance, and yet the effect is all the more important. Now, if you feel like there is a specific method, you will always find yourself at a dead end with anybody. So, because the idea is that when you try to approach people like a pickup line, sooner or later the pickup line fails, and now your science collapses. And this is the antithesis to the thesis of the thesis. the idea that gangs can be theorized, which they cannot. However, you can still get appropriate effects based on specific variables. However, whether these variables apply or not are never going to be written in stone. And to throw that into perspective, let's look at males. We've been talking. I've been talking about females all week. I'm tired of talking about females. I'm gonna talk about females tomorrow because of the male gender thing, the male female gender thing. So we ain't even talking about females right now. We're gonna talk about males. Males are going to automatically deal with you differently depending on how you interact with females. Now that may sound a little off, but you understand the gang. The gang mindset is that if being part of the gang means interacting with females a specific way consistently, then if you don't fit this criteria, you've automatically cut off your affiliation and cooperation to the gang. And this then puts the gang in a position to cut you off in order to maintain status. Now, this is why gangs is more of a pop culture thing, because it can be amusing to think about, especially in high school, who's who and what's what. Who talks to who doesn't talk to who. And how that works out is, if you ever seen a movie, you know, where they depict high school life, and you got kids that basically said, okay, so and so and so and so is the cool guys, so and so and so and so is the nerds, so and so and so and so are neutral, so and so and so and so hates everybody, so and so and so and so knows everybody. Like, you know what I mean? It becomes more of a activity, a hobby, versus society. But it's society adapted into a hobby. And you know, I feel like most kids don't think of it that way, but you can always bring this logic back by figuring out who you don't talk to, or who you prefer not to talk to, or who you prefer to talk to. And these biases alone dictate how your gang was formed. Because the idea is that whoever you talk to should automatically be accessible to whoever you are affiliated with. Whoever you don't talk to should also be feelings of this. And whoever you essentially consider neutral should also be neutral to your party. And I feel like this is a gap, the gap of unreachable people, because you're always going to, like I said, there's that gap. The longer you're in a game, the longer this gap increases. You're going to always have the gang. You're going to always have the group of people who you can't reach because of your affiliations get wider and wider and wider. And it's not a consequence of your actions. This is just what you would call life happening simultaneously. As you develop your biases, people develop their biases. And then by the time you've gotten to a point where you've noticing these biases reach your attention span, it's probably too late. And you know, in a world where the idea of discrimination is looked down upon, this can sound like I'm basically making this up. However, there's more to life than discrimination. People are always going to be accessible to people who know people. People are always going to be inaccessible to people who don't know people. So the greatest thing you could do is know people in order to, if you're worried about people you don't know. Now, this is probably easier said than done because the idea is that people are, I've talked about people as a resource as well. And if people are a resource, then they should be able to be leveraged against you. And I feel like if you've lived long enough, then people have been leveraged against you. So, you know, that's just the proof of that. Now, where things turn interesting is how you unleverage people to you. And how there's so many ways to do it. However, whether you get the result that you want or the result that wants you, it's totally arbitrary. Like you can't. It's not your choice. You can't decide on a variable that you're not controlling because it's controlling you. By you working to meet or affiliate is a more appropriate word because I don't think people are going to go out their way to just say hi to somebody. You're probably going to want to affiliate with them and be able to be like, yeah, I know so and so. We met, yada yada yada. Yeah, that's the homie. And the reason why you would want to have that type of relationship is because just being able to say hi and bye to somebody is not an affiliation. You can say hi to bye to any stranger on the street and call it a day. But the ability to address somebody and to engage them in the presence of another person is a asset within itself. Now, you know, this may sound this concept may sound useless once you've created your own individual life, which is another way that gangs disintegrate. But I feel like if the gang's cause is strong enough, then it won't separate. If the gang's cause isn't strong enough, it will separate. It's like looking at elementary school friends versus high school friends versus college friends versus old people friends. But the funny thing is all of those groups can remain intact provided that there was a general movement, a concerted movement. And I feel like that's where the culture comes in. Because the element that I've omitted so far, purposely, mind you, is the idea of the leader, or what you would call the populare. I hope I've heard that word before, but we'll leave it at that. And the reason why you would call this person a populare is because they are the glue of the group. They keep everybody, neatly together. And this is also easier said than done because just as easy as you can create a group, you can also rip a group apart. Or you can lose your job. um and I feel like losing your job to the group is a typical result, especially for those who endeavor for the group, because what you do for the group will not it's not at any point to benefit you or to not benefit you. It's to basically have an effect on the group. And by having an effect on the group, that's when you get your effect of a positive or negative result. So in other words, it's like not working for yourself to work for yourself. which can in turn lead to you not working for yourself sometimes, depending on the type of group, type of game that you have, or you. Most of the time, you're not working for yourself, but if you do get the chance to work for yourself, well, you still have obligations that make you not work for yourself, because that's also a common courtesy, the idea that you have to make yourself a little uncomfortable so the group can be comfortable. Um, and that's just a perfect group mentality. The idea that this is a mini societal project you got going on. And the reason why it is a mini societal project is because it is supposed to work. Groups are not supposed to form and then not form anymore. That's just like having a group with no leadership. A group with no leadership stands still. And what happens when you got a group of people just standing still? People walk away. I feel like that's the most important rule of the group. Don't make people stand still. And if gangs do not appeal to you or to address it as a gang, then that's also your decision. I can't critique you for not wanting to use something that I use. That's even though you may be subject to that if I had enough people. um, but all in all, the game can only benefit you, because what happens is people tend to misunderstand the group. The group works for nobody. The group is to be the group. The group is its own reward, the ability to provide company without needing to entertain company. And you'll get the difference when you have friends versus house guests. There's a difference. A house guest is temporary. Friends are forever, right? You can't put a price on friendship. That's what they keep telling us. Hopefully this is right. Now, if I don't want to put a price on friendship, then how do I keep the game motivation relevant? And I feel like that's only able to work when you apply a youthful point of view to it. Meaning, it's easier to focus the group I on something not related to yourself or the group, so that everybody can feel comfortable. Because the worst thing you could do in a group is single somebody out. The last thing you want to do in a group is make somebody leave the group. And that can just be a hard life lesson to learn, because numbers lie. No, numbers don't lie, people do. And the reason why people do is because if you were a number oriented person, then you will understand that you will never want to see your numbers go negative. You always want to see your numbers be positive. And positive always helps, negative doesn't. Now, what happens is your numbers become so positive that you start to make that mistake, that negative doesn't matter anymore. And I feel like that's just a fact of the matter, that people tend to apply a video game mentality, that once I reach a certain point, numbers don't matter anymore. So a couple of people feel like the group isn't working for them, then oh well, hit the dirt, hit the highway, whatever. And that's just a terrible mindset, because no matter what your group is, the identity is that everybody is important. That is that's what makes a leader. That's what makes a gang. That's what makes a friend. And if you can tie all these things together with one motto, then I think you should use it. I'll leave it at that. Thank you for listening. Stay very cool. Very cool. For shout outs in the mindset of the cool people, I would like to shout out Juanita Hooper, Shamin Skinner, Chris Vasquez, my unknown guy who still has yet to re-give me his name. I'll find him. You know I'm gonna be in Jersey Gardens Mall on Saturday, so don't even worry about that. Shout out to my anonymous patrons 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Update news. I'm basically, my charity game is there. Not doing anything spectacular. If I am, I'll probably have something to show you, but as of yet, I have nothing to show you. So if I have nothing to show you, I would like you to assume I'm not doing nothing spectacular with the charity stuff. In terms of my personal stuff, I'm basically, my business is started. I have an ugly product. It's an ugly product because I just finished the prototype. I can't show you what it is yet because I have to figure out a couple more quirks. Also, I redid my marketing plan. Not my marketing plan. I redid my product plan, and I will now be increasing content based on content versus based on support, because I want supporters to not feel like they need a conditioning support. As in order to maintain this mentality, I must create content without applying conditions to support. So with that said, expect a transition from 1 hour to 2 hours once I reach my 24th hour mark. And how that works is that once I reach certain goals now in content, I will be meeting those marks with more content, meaning when I hit my 24th hour, I will be doing 2 hours. By the time I reach my weekend hours, I will be doing 4 hours. Wait, no. Yeah, 4 hours. By the time I reach a month, I'll be doing 8 hours, and then by the time I reach a year, that's it. Hopefully by the time I reach a year, I will be no, okay. By the time I reach a year, I don't know, I'll have a couple of businesses up by then, so I expect my supporters to stick around and enjoy the profits to be made in the near future. Besides that, remember kids, gang banging is only harmful if you put yourself in harm's way. And that's it. Bye bye.